What makes you laugh? It's very funny. Give me an example. Well, I was laughing myself when I killed my mother. You were what? I was.
August 10th, 2012, Tennessee. Zachary Davis waits until his mother is asleep. He quietly grabs a sledgehammer from the basement and commits the most horrible crime, among bursts of laughter. What happens next, and the way Zachary retells it, will haunt investigators forever. This is the 5 most disturbing interviews with teen killers.
Eric enticed him into a wooded area that's adjacent to McCoy Street, and once there, killed Derek Roby by means of choking him as well as trauma to his head.
August 2nd, 1993, Savona, New York. A peaceful morning was shattered forever. 13-year-old Eric Smith spotted Derek Roby walking alone to a local summer camp. What happened next would haunt this small community for decades. Eric lured Derek into a nearby wooded area, a place just a stone's throw from the park and only a few hundred yards from Derek's home. There, Eric strangled him until the boy lost consciousness. Then the violence escalated. A large rock was dropped onto Derek's head. But the horror didn't end there. Eric went on to inflict cruel acts no one expected from a child. The community was stunned. How could a boy so young commit such an unthinkable crime against a child even younger?
Neighbors watched in disbelief as their quiet street was turned into a crime scene. Derek Roby was beaten to death.
Autopsy reports show he died from blows to the head.
Despite the brutality, initial assumptions pointed to an adult stranger. No one suspected one of their own, a boy with freckles, thick glasses, and red hair. Often bullied and isolated, Eric Smith's childhood was anything but easy. Bullied relentlessly for his appearance, he was a loner with a history of strange, aggressive behavior. Friends and family recalled incidents where young Eric acted out violently, even burning his own face with a cigarette at one point.
And what could cause such violent behavior in a child? The defense has an explanation.
Eric Smith suffers from a mental disease that can be characterized as a rage disorder.
His defense team centered their case on a controversial diagnosis: intermittent explosive disorder, a rage disorder, they said, that robbed him of control over his violent impulses. His mother's use of an anti-epilepsy drug during pregnancy was presented as a potential cause, one with seriously debated medical implications. Doctors weighed in, some confirming the potential dangers, others disputing the link. The prosecution argued Eric was fully aware of his actions and knew they were wrong. Their case was clear. No disorder excused the horrendous crime. The jury reached a verdict quickly, guilty of second-degree murder. At just 14 years old, Eric Smith was sentenced to 9 years to life in prison, the maximum penalty at the time for a juvenile. But the story didn't end with the sentence.
I knew I had a problem with anger. I knew I do. I might be, just happy-go-lucky now, and someone get me mad.
Behind bars, Eric reflected on his anger, a problem he admitted to even before the murder. In interviews years later, he described feeling like a victim himself, bullied, isolated, desperate to feel powerful or in control. He confessed to the parole board that strangling Derek gave him a good feeling, because for once, he was the one hurting someone else.
I don't know why he did it.
I asked him why he did it. His words almost verbatim were, "I don't know. I just saw this kid, this blonde kid, and I wanted to hurt him."
His own family was shocked and devastated. Eric's grandfather remembered the confession vividly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I killed that little boy." Those words echoed through the courtroom and the community's conscience. The arrest of a 13-year-old for such a vicious crime shocked the nation. People struggled to reconcile the image of a frightened, freckled boy with the brutal killer he had become. Years later, Eric would tell interviewers,
"Call me a monster, a cold-blooded killer, a demon child, Satan incarnate. What the name you give me doesn't mean that that's who I am."
He spoke of remorse, but his words left many unsettled. Was this true repentance or a carefully crafted persona? The family of Derek Roby struggled with their grief, compounded by the uncertainty of Eric's future. Every 2 years, Eric would face the parole board, and every 2 years, the Roby family was forced to relive their nightmare.
Second time for the panel, denied. It upsets me, the fact that we have to beg to keep this killer behind bars.
And you foresee the day when you would say...
Doreen Roby, Derek's mother, spoke openly about the fear and frustration. Now he's done his time and we're gonna let him go. It scares the hell out of me. The community of Savona united in protest, unwilling to accept that the boy who had taken their beloved child might walk free.
What do you think is gonna happen?
So you find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree?
Yes.
Is that unanimous?
Yes.
Their fears were not unfounded. Eric's parole was denied 10 times before a final decision changed everything. The parole board finally granted Smith release in October 2021, after 28 years behind bars. He was 41, a man transformed, or so he claimed. Eric spoke to the board about his plans, pursuing a college degree, working in electrical installation or carpentry, and starting a family. He even revealed he was engaged to a woman studying law, a connection that began through letters about juvenile justice.
I'm not the same person. There's not a day that goes by in some way, shape, or form that I'm like forced to remember what I did. I'm automatically thinking I killed Derek and the pain that I caused Dale and Dory.
Still, some remain deeply skeptical. Prosecutor John Tunney, who fought to convict Eric in the 90s, warned, "The question is, will Eric Smith be a success story or somebody that we're pointing to and saying, the system blew it with that one?" The tension between rehabilitation and public safety continues to fuel debates.
Directed at Derek at all. It was directed at all the other guys who used to pick on me. And when I was torturing and killing Derek, that was what I saw in my head.
At the heart of this chilling case is Eric's own explanation, wanting to hurt a blonde kid because of his own years of pain and bullying. But the horror goes beyond motive. It's the calculated violence, the coldness in execution, and the haunting question of whether someone can truly change. He said, "If I could switch places with him and take the grave for him, I'd do it in a second." Yet for many, the pain lingers. Doubt shadows every word.
On February 1st, 2022, after spending 28 years behind bars, Eric Smith walked out of prison.
He now lives in Queens, New York, under parole supervision, his future uncertain. But this is not just Eric's story, it's Derek's story. The boy robbed of a childhood, whose memory still haunts a small town. And it's the story of a community grappling with the limits of justice, forgiveness, and fear. If this case unsettles you, brace yourself, because the next Teen Killers interview reveals even darker depths.
It wasn't long before their admiration for killers became a desire to become killers themselves. They had gotten into filmmaking and started carrying camcorders wherever they went.
Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk weren't just ordinary high school juniors in Pocatello, Idaho. They were methodically plotting one of the most disturbing crimes ever committed by teens. Their fascination with horror movies and real-life killers wasn't just an obsession. It became a blueprint for murder. In the fall of 2006, Draper and Adamczyk began documenting their sinister plans with a camcorder, creating a video diary that detailed their twisted logic and motivations. The footage, which would later become crucial evidence, starts with them discussing their desire to make history and achieve a high death count. They openly idolize the Columbine shooters, dressing in black trench coats and mimicking their behavior, all while planning their own path to infamy. Draper often spoke about feeling invisible, believing that committing a horrific act would finally make him somebody. The pair started compiling a death list of potential victims, but one name stood out as their first target: Cassie Stoddard, a classmate who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their plan was meticulously detailed, but their motivations were disturbingly casual. Killing for fame, for thrill, for attention. They recorded themselves discussing their plans, including disturbing statements about natural selection and their rejection of morality. Adamczyk, in particular, expressed a nihilistic worldview, arguing that laws only exist to make people want to break them more. Draper, meanwhile, seemed almost excited by the prospect of violence, at one point stating, "I feel like I want to kill somebody." The morning of September 22, 2006, started like any other for Cassie. At 8:28 a.m., she was filmed at her locker by Draper, completely unaware of the dark intentions lurking behind the camera. That evening, while house-sitting for her aunt and uncle, she invited her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, over. Draper and Adam Chick soon joined them, ostensibly to watch Kill Bill, Volume 2. But before the movie ended, they abruptly left, claiming they wanted to catch a different film at the theater. In reality, Draper had quietly unlocked the basement door on his way out, setting their deadly plan in motion.
Our victim, and sad as it may be, she's our friend. But you know what? We all have to make sacrifices. Our first victim is going to be Cassie Stoddard and her friends.
After leaving the house, the pair donned dark clothing, gloves, and white-painted masks. They tried to lure Cassie and Matt downstairs by making noises and cutting the power. But when that failed, they waited for Matt to leave. Cassie's decision to stay and fulfill her house-sitting duties sealed her fate. With Matt gone, Draper and Adam Chick cut the power once more, then moved upstairs. Draper carried a dagger, Adam Chick a hunting knife. They slammed closet doors to frighten Cassie before attacking her as she lay on the living room couch. Cassie was stabbed approximately 30 times, 12 wounds potentially fatal. The brutality of the attack shocked even seasoned investigators. Their immediate reaction was captured on their own camcorder, with Draper stating,
Just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke. I'm shaking. I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie.
This cold confession, recorded mere moments after the murder, showed no remorse, only adrenaline-fueled excitement. The investigation quickly focused on Draper and Adam Chick after inconsistencies in their alibis. Both initially claimed to be at the movies, but when confronted with evidence, Draper broke down and led police to Black Rock Canyon, where they had buried evidence, including the camcorder, masks, gloves, and weapons. Their video diary, recovered from the canyon, became damning evidence. It included detailed plans for multiple murders, discussions about their motivations, and their anticipation of becoming famous. Both teens were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. During the trials, each tried to blame the other, but the video evidence left no doubt about their shared responsibility. The jury convicted both, and they received mandatory life sentences without parole. The senselessness of the crime shook Pocatello to its core, especially given the age of the perpetrators and their disturbing motivations. Even in prison, Draper and Adam Chick's relationship remains distant. Draper now expresses remorse, stating, "Had I not met Tori, this never would have happened." He describes their friendship as shallow, bonded only by a shared fascination with horror movies. Draper claims he never truly believed the murder would happen, despite weeks of planning and multiple failed attempts at other crimes. The case raises disturbing questions about teenage violence, media influence, and the potential for evil in seemingly ordinary individuals. Draper and Adam Chick weren't from broken homes or abusive backgrounds. They were intelligent, creative teens who made a conscious choice to embrace darkness. In the end, their quest for fame succeeded, but not in the way they imagined. Instead of being remembered as notorious killers, they're now cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked obsession, the seductive power of infamy, and the irrevocable consequences of a single violent act. Today, both men remain incarcerated at the Idaho State Correctional Institution, serving life sentences without the possibility of parole. Their story stands as a stark warning about the potential for evil that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. This deep dive into Brian Draper's role in the murder of Cassie Stoddard reveals not just the details of a horrific crime, but the disturbing psychology behind teenage violence.
This is probably the worst murder scene I ever worked.
Phillips is accused of beating and stabbing Maddie Clifton.
I could tell that she was struck in the head 3 times.
The story began on November 3rd, 1998, in Jacksonville, Florida. 8-year-old Maddie Clifton vanished while playing in her neighborhood. The community launched a massive search, with flyers posted everywhere, and neighbors, Phillips included, joining in the effort. But behind closed doors, a darker truth was unfolding just across the street from Maddie's home. Phillips later claimed the nightmare began with an accident. He said Maddie was struck in the eye by a baseball during play, and fearing his abusive father's reaction, he panicked. But what happened next went far beyond any accident.
Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips, it is the sentence of this court that you be confined in prison without the benefit of parole for the rest of your natural life.
Mom, that harsh sentence came after details emerged about how Phillips hid Maddie's body under his waterbed for 7 days while pretending nothing was wrong. The boy who once played with Maddie and her sister on home videos now faced a life behind bars.
Through the entire time, I was putting myself in a fantasy world that nothing had happened, and that was my defense for everything when I was a kid. Was if something went wrong.
That haunting admission from Phillips, recorded years later in prison, reveals a boy desperately trying to escape the consequences of his actions, but reality would catch up soon enough. The discovery on November 10th, 1998 was grisly. Phillips' mother noticed a strange wet spot in his room and found Maddie's body hidden beneath the bed. Police arrested Joshua at school that day. He quickly confessed, but his explanation didn't match the evidence. Prosecutors argued that the crime was far more sinister than an accident. While Phillips claimed he acted out of panic, the brutality of the attack told a different story. Maddie had been beaten with a baseball bat, stabbed repeatedly, and her body carefully hidden. Even more chilling was Phillips' composure during the week Maddie was missing. He helped search for her, comforted her family, and maintained a facade of innocence. The community's trust in the seemingly normal teenage boy evaporated overnight. The psychological impact of a life sentence hit Phillips hard. It wasn't until he saw elderly inmates shuffling to the prison pharmacy that reality set in.
The fact that I had to come to terms in dealing with that I'm going to die in here, I might do 60, 70 years in prison, really helped me mature and helped me grow morally and it helped me develop empathy.
That forced maturity didn't bring comfort to Maddie's family. Her mother's victim impact statement made their loss painfully clear.
These past few days, I've sat here and I'm in this courtroom and I have listened to all of the classes that the defendant has been able to take. What classes has Maddie been able to take over the past 18 years?
Years later, Phillips sat in court again, this time facing the family he'd devastated. His words were heavy with regret and realization.
I do understand pain. I have become quite intimate with suffering. Growing up in prison, I've seen many dark things, and I've been to some dark places.
Despite his expressions of remorse, Phillips never wrote an apology letter to Maddie's family. He insisted they deserved to hear his regret face to face, believing only direct eye contact could convey his sincerity. As years passed, Phillips became a model prisoner. He earned his GED, worked as a paralegal, and tutored other inmates. But none of that could erase the horror of what he'd done as a teenager.
It is just unfathomable that all this could have occurred. It tears my mind asunder to know that I stole such a precious life from you.
Today, Joshua Phillips remains behind bars, his future uncertain. The Supreme Court ruling on juvenile life sentences without parole offered a glimmer of hope, but his resentencing in 2017 upheld the original punishment. Phillips's case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about juvenile justice, rehabilitation, and the capacity for change. His story is a disturbing reminder of how quickly childhood innocence can turn into tragedy, and how some wounds never truly heal. The next chapter in this countdown goes even deeper into the darkness of teenage violence, and we assure you, you are not ready for what comes next.
I was laughing when I saw my mother. You were laughing? Why were you laughing? I don't know. Were you laughing your ass off at that time? Yes, sir.
August 11th, 2012. By sunrise, the small Tennessee town of Hendersonville was forever changed. Zachary Davis, then just 15, stood accused of beating his mother to death in her sleep and attempting to burn his brother alive. What investigators would soon uncover was a disturbing portrait of a troubled teen whose mind had slipped into darkness long before that horrific night. But to truly understand what happened, we have to start with the years leading up to the murder. Zachary's descent into mental illness began at age 9, following the death of his father from ALS. His grandmother, Gail Cron, later testified that after his father's passing, Zachary became withdrawn and emotionally flat. He began hearing voices, drawing disturbing images, and showing clear signs of severe depression. Yet, for reasons that remain unclear, his mother eventually pulled him out of therapy. The family moved to Sumner County, Tennessee, but Zachary's condition worsened. He became increasingly isolated, often speaking in a monotonous whisper and wearing the same hoodie every day. His notebooks contained dark writings like, "You can't spell slaughter without laughter." His phone held apps about serial killers and torture devices. Despite these warning signs, Zachary's mother, Melanie Davis, tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for her two sons. On August 10, 2012, that fragile peace was shattered. After a family movie night, Zachary packed a backpack and a satchel with clothes, gloves, a ski mask, and a claw hammer. He waited until his mother went to bed around 9 p.m. Then, in an act of calculated brutality, he retrieved a sledgehammer from the basement and entered his mother's bedroom. He struck her in the head nearly 20 times as she slept. With his mother dead, Zachary closed her door, went to the family game room, and doused it with whiskey and gasoline. He set it ablaze, intending to kill his older brother Josh in the fire. But because he closed the door, the fire didn't spread immediately. The smoke alarm woke Josh, who escaped and discovered his mother's bloodied body. Meanwhile, Zachary fled on foot, making it nearly 10 miles before authorities caught up with him. During his initial confession, he displayed a chilling lack of emotion. When asked if he could go back in time, would he still carry out the attack? He replied, "I would probably kill Josh with a sledgehammer too." The evidence against Zachary was overwhelming. His phone revealed a disturbing fascination with violence, including bookmarks to articles about other brutal murders, a handwritten note found among his belongings, detailed strategies for killers to avoid capture. He even named his sledgehammer Requiem, a term often associated with death masses.
Usual for a 15-year-old to take a sledgehammer and be laughing his ass off and hit her in the head with it 12 times. What do you think? I don't have You can't think of any reason whatsoever.
During the trial, the defense argued that Zachary was deeply disturbed, not pure evil. Dr. Bradley Freeman, who diagnosed him with schizophrenia and depressive disorder, testified that Zachary's judgment was driven by his psychosis. They cited his history of hearing voices, particularly that of his deceased father, as evidence of his severe mental illness. But the prosecution presented a different picture. They argued that Zachary's actions were calculated and premeditated. The jury saw his videotaped confession, where he described the murder in chilling detail. When asked why he laughed during the attack, Zachary replied, "I just thought she deserved it." One particularly disturbing aspect of the case was Zachary's flat affect and emotional detachment. Psychologists noted his monotone voice and lack of appropriate emotional responses. During his Dr. Phil interview, he described the murder in a matter-of-fact tone, occasionally smiling when recalling specific details. Despite his defense team's efforts, the jury took just 3 hours to reach a verdict. Zachary Davis was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, attempted first-degree murder, and aggravated arson. At his sentencing, the judge noted, "You became evil, Mr. Davis. You went to the dark side. It's that plain and simple." The judge sentenced Zachary to life in prison for the murder of his mother, plus 20 years each for attempted murder and arson to be served consecutively. In Tennessee, a life sentence is 60 years with eligibility for parole after 51 years. Zachary will be in his mid-60s before he can even be considered for release. Throughout the proceedings, Zachary showed little remorse. During his testimony, he changed his story, claiming his brother actually killed their mother and that he was covering for him. This last-minute claim was quickly dismissed by the court. His grandmother, Gail Cron, pleaded for leniency, insisting that proper mental health treatment could have prevented the tragedy. But the judge was unmoved, stating, "The thing that bothers me is that you have shown no regrets, no remorse in murdering your own mother at age 15. The case left the community grappling with difficult questions about juvenile mental health, parental responsibility, and the nature of evil. Experts debated whether Zachary's condition could have been prevented with proper intervention. His history of mental illness was well documented, yet he slipped through the cracks of the mental health system. Some saw him as a lost child, failed by those around him. While others viewed him as inherently dangerous, the tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of untreated mental illness, especially in young people. It also highlights the challenges of balancing justice with compassion in cases involving juvenile offenders. As Zachary begins his life sentence, the community continues to wrestle with the aftermath. His story is a haunting example of how darkness can take root in the most unlikely places, and a warning about the dangers of ignoring mental health issues in our youth. Let's hear about our final tragic tale.
Jasmine Richardson, also known as JR, once a 12-year-old girl who, with the help of her 23-year-old boyfriend at the time, Jeremy Steinke.
April 2006, Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. What started as a seemingly ordinary suburban family story would explode into one of the most disturbing cases of teen violence ever recorded. At the heart of this twisted tale stood Jasmine Richardson, just 12 years old, and her 23-year-old boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke. Jasmine Richardson's story began like so many other teenage rebellions. Once a straight-A student involved in the fine arts and the honor roll at her Catholic school, Jasmine was described as bright and sociable, but as she entered her preteens, things changed. Her parents' concerns grew as she began frequenting the local mall, falling in with an older goth crowd, and spending more and more time on social media. Jasmine started falsifying her age on profiles, claiming to be 15, and posting about disturbing interests. Everything from serial killers to occult practices. It was at the Medicine Hat Mall that Jasmine met Jeremy Steinke, introduced by a mutual friend. Despite the staggering age difference, their relationship developed quickly, and it wasn't long before Jasmine's parents found out. They were understandably horrified and forbade her from seeing him, but that only made the relationship more appealing to Jasmine, who began sneaking out and breaking rules at an alarming rate. Jeremy, on the other hand, was a troubled adult with a history of abuse, drug use, and violent fantasies. He proclaimed himself a 300-year-old werewolf, wore a vial of blood around his neck, and posted openly about his dark desires online. Jasmine became obsessed, and together they created a fantasy world fueled by the darkest corners of the internet and horror movies like Natural Born Killers. Their online communications grew more sinister. Jasmine's messages to Jeremy were explicit about her intentions. She wrote, "So, I have this plan. It begins with me killing them, and it ends with me living with you." Her friends overheard her talking on the phone about killing her parents, but dismissed it as teenage drama. No one realized how serious she was. The couple's emails became more detailed, discussing exactly how they would carry out the murders. Jasmine drew a comic strip depicting her family being murdered, which would later become a key piece of evidence. All the while, her parents tried to intervene, grounding her and taking away electronics. But Jasmine was determined to be with Jeremy, no matter the cost. April 23, 2006, the Richardson home fell silent. That afternoon, young Tyler's friend arrived for a playdate and discovered the horror. Jasmine's 8-year-old brother was found upstairs, his throat slit and a toy lightsaber nearby, a heartbreaking sign of his attempt to defend himself. Downstairs, Mark and Deborah Richardson's bodies lay lifeless, both stabbed repeatedly. At first, police feared Jasmine was another victim, but it quickly became clear she wasn't missing. She was on the run with Jeremy. The couple was arrested the next day, 130 kilometers away in Leader, Saskatchewan. Evidence piled up fast. The emails, the comic strip from Jasmine's locker, and witness testimony from friends and partygoers who'd seen them celebrating after the murders. Jeremy had even bragged at a party about gutting them like fish, while Jasmine added, "My little brother gargled." Their lack of remorse was chilling, but the most disturbing aspect was Jasmine's calm demeanor. At just 12 years old, she had orchestrated the murder of her entire family to be with her adult boyfriend. The prosecution made it clear this was no impulsive crime of passion. It was a calculated, premeditated slaughter. Jeremy, drunk and high on several substances, broke into the Richardson home through a basement window that night. He attacked Deborah first, then Mark when he rushed to help. According to Jeremy's later confession, Mark's last words were, "Why are you doing this?" Jeremy's reply, "Because it's what your daughter wanted." Upstairs, Jasmine, by both her own and Jeremy's accounts, killed her little brother. They rationalized the murder. believing he was too emotionally sensitive to be orphaned. After the murders, they didn't flee immediately. Instead, Jasmine cleaned up, took her mother's purse, and used her credit card to withdraw cash for a taxi to Jeremy's trailer. Remarkably, they attended a party that morning, laughing, kissing, and giving no sign of what they had just done. The trial revealed disturbing details about their relationship. Jeremy's friends testified that Jasmine had lied about her age. But even when they found out the truth, Jeremy refused to end things. Jasmine's friends said she had talked about killing her parents before, but they hadn't believed her. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of premeditation, from the emails to the comic strip to witness accounts. Under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, Jasmine could only be sentenced to a maximum of 10 years. She spent 4 years in a psychiatric institution, followed by 4.5 years of conditional supervision. Jeremy received 3 concurrent life sentences, eligible for parole after 25 years. While in jail, Jasmine and Jeremy exchanged love letters, even getting engaged. But the reality of their crimes couldn't be ignored. Jasmine became the youngest person in Canadian history convicted of multiple first-degree murder counts. She began her sentence at just 13 years old and completed it in 2016. By 2020, her criminal record was expunged. Thanks to pandemic delays, it happened a year early. The Jasmine Richardson case shocked Canada and the world. It raised disturbing questions about teen violence, vulnerable youth, internet radicalization, and the limits of juvenile justice. Most unsettling was the calculated nature of the murders, planned by a 12-year-old girl who showed so little remorse.